Now, growing up, I was a very shy, timid, and an unduly apologetic girl. If you bumped into me, I will apologize to you for being in your way. I even apologized when I was right because I didn't want to come across as snob. I even apologized to the bullies at my school for not being good enough. Given half a chance then, I would have apologized even for breathing. People liked that. People liked how docile I was. For no real fault of mine except my genetics, when I was about 5 years old, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. Words and numbers didn't make any sense to me. And my teachers ensured that my mum knew that I was a lost cause, and she was fighting a losing battle. So with the support of a special educator, and with about 5 or 6 years of support and guidance, finally, words became a little forgiving, but numbers were not that merciful. I had to work 4 times more than my classmates to come to grips with even the simple of concepts. And I did. And from a nobody, I somehow managed to make it to the top 1% of academic achievers at my school. Thank you. And funnily enough, I also managed to score a scholarship during my GCSE or 10th grade, or whatever you want to call it. Now I'm thinking to myself, I have somehow managed to turn things around for me. From here on, it's just onwards and upwards. But as an adolescent then, I didn't know that this was just the tip of the iceberg for what was in store for me. A few years later, I was in a motor vehicle accident. I was run over by somebody who was under the influence of alcohol. Again, no fault of mine, except that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. My family was asked to be prepared for the worst. I had several head injuries, a shattered pelvis, a broken collarbone, and horrible spinal injuries. That was not it. I was not that lucky. I had lost the entire left side of my face. There was nothing left to it. So it took about 3 doctors and 56 stitches later to come up with something that remotely looked like a face. These were just physical injuries. There was a tsunami of emotion inside of me. And this was also the time people, social media, would go like, I woke up like this. Yeah, right? And I was waking up every single day looking like a Frankenstein's experiment. Slowly, but very surely, I became a victim of this culture of curated perfection. I couldn't help but compare. There was nobody to tell me that this was going to be all right. I had been so comfortable at being weak that it was sickening. So I decided to isolate myself and made books my best friends. Isolating myself was easier because you wouldn't believe the number of people who still don't know that staring is rude. So then this is that period where I read somewhere that being popular on social media, it's like sitting at the cool kids table at the cafeteria of a mental health asylum. life-changing. So, physically, it's taken a few years for me to recover. But mentally, I'm still in the process of healing, but by being kind to myself. So, fast forward a few years, I was rushed to the hospital due to this excruciating pain in my right eye. And I must have endured this for like 20 minutes. And the 21st minute, I knew I was blind in my right eye. The doctor said I had something called retrobulbar neuritis. Now, the next logical step is the treatment. So it would take a couple of injections and also a truckload of steroids. Now, the problem with these injections was that they were L-shaped. Trigger warning, some of you are going to find this very uncomfortable. This L-shaped syringe were to be inserted right into my eye socket, like literally right through my eyes, so I was fully awake. Nothing in the world had prepared me for this. Now, I was not just disfigured, I was also blind, at least partially. I never understood this expression, going through hell and back, up until that moment. But I survived, and eventually I got back my vision, clearly. So, and I also think it's better than what it was before. So serendipity, I guess, after all. Now, after this, my undergraduate years were okay, and my years in Scotland were uneventful, and I'm looking at my life like, yeah, it's okay. But life is looking back at me, and it's like, I'm not done with you yet. So that very year, I lost my 10-year-old pet, a Labrador named Knack. In Swahili, an East Coast African language, Nala means a gift. And she truly was the best gift of my life. When I had lost my vision, sometimes Nala would help me find my way to the washroom. So her passing destroyed me. By far, this has to be the worst thing that had ever happened to me. And I couldn't even grieve. I didn't know how to grieve. We are never taught the process of grieving at schools, colleges, or universities. It is assumed that when you're in a situation like that, somehow you will cope with it. No, even as a full-grown adult then, I couldn't. So, I went into therapy, and I learned to remember her glorious life, which I was lucky enough to share with her. Now, the worst has already happened, and this is the year 2018. I'm in Nottingham, and it's a Monday morning, and I have to wake up for my classes. So I get up, and the next thing I know is I've hit the floor. Yet again, I have been rushed to the hospital, and a slew of tests started. The doctors came back saying, "We have looked at your medical history, and we think it's because of the accident that you were involved in a few years ago. Something was left untreated, etc., etc." Their diagnosis was partial paralysis from the waist down on my right side. It took massive amount of physiotherapy, medicines, and a plethora of tests before I could stand up and walk by myself without the help of a wheelchair. Now, this is also the time I realized how many things I have taken for granted in life. The very act of getting up and walking around was no longer a given for me. Actually, it was a privilege, something to be grateful for. Now, all along, I had to keep reminding myself to keep courage. When life-threatening or life-changing incidents happen, the physical battle is lost later. It's always the psychological one that flies out of the window first. And when you give up mentally, it's a very hard, dark, and a cold place to return from. Now, you must be looking at me like, does she have any happy stories? The answer is an emphatic yes. In fact, I have so many that they can't be contained in minutes. But in a nutshell, today, I have a gorgeous partner who would walk to the ends of the earth for me, and vice versa. We also have two chronic slobberers. This is Ozzy, my chocolate Labrador. He has a form of dwarfism, which I think is very common in chocolate Labradors. He's 14 years old, and this December we will be celebrating his 15th birthday. And this is my 5-year-old Rottweiler, Kobe, and he thinks he's the king of the house. And we let him believe that for our own sanity. Anyways, I digress. So, the point is, I decided to share these stories of adversities with you because I truly believe these incidents is what has made me who I am today. Diamonds are not made because you take a piece of stone and keep kissing it every day. They're made because they go through the rough. So, when you go into this world with infinite opportunities for your pickings, whatever your calling is, what matters is that you answer it with courage and integrity. In an ugly world, courage is beautiful, but it's also rare. Contrary to popular belief, quitting is not just for weaklings. Successful and strong people are serial quitters. The difference is, these people know when to quit that toxic relationship that's holding them back in any shape, size, or form. They quit this physical or mental bad habit because it's stopping them from achieving true greatness. They also know when to quit, being in touch with those parasitic family members who bring nothing but drama. I should know. I have a fair share in my family. Quit every single time you feel you're in a space which is not adding value to your life. By tolerating anything and everything, you're actually teaching people that they can treat you bad and get away with it. And that's a disservice to yourself. Now, this is not going to be easy. It's going to take every single fiber in your body to give up a few things. But one day, the older and the wiser version of you will thank you for it. Now, people for some bizarre reason love to call me a motivational speaker. I am not. If not anything, I think I'm a storyteller. Your motivation stems from your self-awareness, and nobody should be able to take credit for it except you yourself. However, stories, on the other hand, can change lives. The next time you meet a strong person I encourage you to find out what demons they had to conquer in their life and in their story. Believe me, these will be the stories worth reminiscing. These will be the stories you will not find on Wikipedia. I'm a firm believer that your story can become someone else's life guide. This is exactly what I am trying to achieve with schools, or even in general. It's high time we start listening to students and their voices and their life experiences. And I thought the pandemic was our wake-up call. You would think with my paralysis, my ordeal is ended. At least that was physical. After I have started doing this, I go through mental paralysis every single day, because when I walk up to people and I say, listen, I think we should listen to students, they look at me like I am the dimwit. Even that I can handle. I have also been told that I should quit what I'm doing because I'm a woman. My gender should have no bearings on my intelligence or my work ethics. The worst of all, I was sat at an office, a very small office, and there was this lady who kept sizing me up, and she walks up to me and she says, could you not sit with your legs crossed? It's disrespectful. And I'm like, to whom? I am not sitting there cross-legged because I want to be fancy. My right leg needs the constant support of my left leg because of how weak it is after my paralysis. Now, I'm never the one who argues with common sense, but I'm also somebody who can never walk away after witnessing stupidity. So I decided. I sat there for the next 10 minutes. I didn't have anything, but I still sat there for the next 10 minutes right in front of her with my legs crossed. And in my head, I'm thinking, what a rebel you are. People love this idea of a strong woman or women as long as they are limited to novels or if they're in superhero costumes. People prefer strong women as long as they are limited to their imagination. And I learned this very early, and I decided, no, I'm not going to limit myself like that. So I started projecting my voice. How dare I? Suddenly, I was too much, too difficult, and apparently I had forgotten my place. 10 out of 10 times, when I was backed into a corner, either by people or by life, every single time I failed, or at least I struggled. Even Shakespeare couldn't have conjured a tragedy like this called my life. So, when the deck was stacked against me, courage became my only option. And with courage as my North Star, today I can tell you that I've not just survived, I am a thriving, proud, difficult woman who's using my education and my life story to put an end to stigma on mental health. Now, when courage becomes your routine, mountains will turn to molehills, and monsters will turn out to be just human beings, but with a lower IQ. So, I've read somewhere that the opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's apathy. It's not caring for your own well-being. Remember that not everybody is lucky to experience courage in their life. Some are not lucky like that. Most people live a very boring and self-preserving 7 or 8 decades and call it a life. If life is generous enough to challenge you, accept it and go through with it with courage. Now, life always comes down to a choice, and when it does, choose wisely. If I can do this, and a million other people around the world who are in similar or worse conditions than me, if they could do this, you should have no excuse when it is your turn to choose courage. When you go into this deafening world, I hope you know what is listening to and what is just unsolicited voices. Finally, when you go out of these walls, or even this room, you have the power to decide if you want to ignite just a spark or start a fire. Thank you, everybody. I had a blast.